Welcome to rSlash Pettyrevenge, where OP gets an entire hotel arrested. Our next Reddit post is from Amateur Horologist. A few years ago, I was staying at a hotel room in suburban Detroit. I was a Navy reservist on my drill weekend. On Saturday night, this couple shows up in the adjoining room with a buddy and their probably 6-year-old kid. I think nothing of it until it's about 10 p.m. and 2 more people show up. Now it's a party. They're being obnoxious, so I knock on the door and ask them to keep it down, that I have to work in the morning. We're not even being loud. How can you hear us? Bro, I'm in the room next to you. There's a door between our rooms. I can hear you clearly. Yeah, okay. And they close the door on me. 45 minutes later, they're just as loud as they had been. I call the front desk. I hear the neighbor's phone ring. He hangs up and says, "If he thinks we're loud, wait until later." They continue the party and are obviously being loud on purpose to spite me. Eventually, I got tired enough and fell asleep at about 1 a.m. I wake up at 5:30 to get ready for work. So, I plug the alarm clock into the socket near the adjoining door, put the speaker against the door they can't open. I put the radio between stations, crank the volume to max, and set the alarm for 5 minutes after I leave the room. I pictured them panicking and furious at not being able to stop it. I would have given anything to see their reaction. Down in the comments, I'm seeing a couple of stories which has a really clever solution to this. Basically, you wake up at, 4 a.m., 5 a.m., and you use the directory to call their room. And then when they answer, "Hello?" you just trash talk them. "Hey, I hope you had a good party last night. Make sure you get plenty of sleep." And then, they call you butthole and they hang up. And then you do it again and again and again. And then eventually they stop answering because they realize they can leave the phone off the hook. But if they leave the phone off the hook, that means they can't get their wake-up call to catch their very important flight. I will say though, there's probably no need to get this petty about it. I had an experience where I was in a hotel for work and I had to sleep because I had to work the next morning and the people next door were super loud. And I just called the front desk. I was like, "Hey, I gotta sleep. These people aren't letting me sleep." And the front desk came up and said, "Hey, shut up or we're throwing you out." And they didn't shut up, so I called the front desk again. And then they came up and were like, "Hey, we're really gonna throw you out if you don't shut up." And that shut them up. So that'll probably work as well. Or you could go nuclear like I'm Ragin' Cajun down in the comments. Something similar happened to us, but I got half the hotel arrested. Long story short, I was staying on the beach in Fort Walton and the room next to ours was party central, even on the balcony and the ground underneath it. Huge groups of young people, all drunk and loud, shouting at each other from the balcony to the ground and vice versa. At midnight, I'd had enough and called the front desk and they said they'd send security. We waited, and finally, after about 20 minutes, a security guy simply walks by the noise and commotion and keeps walking. Doesn't even speak to them. Okay, screw this. I called the local sheriff department and explained my situation. Shortly after, the cops show up and start checking IDs. Turns out they were all underage. A high school senior trip or something from Tennessee, I believe. About 20 people got cuffed and stuffed, and I got a voucher for another night's stay at that hotel. Our next Reddit post is from Dick with Short Legs. My older brother, who's 35, was stupid enough to fall for a pretty picture on a Facebook dating chat page, then chatted via Snapchat and Messenger before stupidly sending nude photos and lewd videos. The whole pickle. My stupid brother lied that he was a CEO, and the scammer, obviously missing some brain cells because looking at my brother, the grotty sink in the photo, and the clothes definitely did not scream CEO, and the scammer fell for it. Now, I love my brother. He's got the ability to be the sharpest pencil, but man, he makes some of the dumbest impulsive choices. This brother of mine is panicking, calling me with, "I'm being blackmailed, they have my nudes, and they're gonna send it to people I know if I don't give them money and I can't pay them." I told him he was an idiot, and I said that I would handle it. To be fair, he was panicking in case our mom got messaged by these people, which is fair, she's one to be feared. Our mom has accidentally received one of his dick pics meant for one of his special friends before, and if she got this, his butt was gonna be turned inside out. The account messaged me, and I told them they were brain dead if they believed my brother had money. They said that I should pay them or they would leak the nudes. I said, "Do it. He's got no money to give you. I don't have money to give you. Nobody knows who he is." Nobody cares, and at most, his mother's gonna whoop his butt for being this stupid. He's a CEO and we will ruin him. Then they sent me his nudes, which I deleted because, ew. I sent a video of my face laughing and telling them they're dumb for believing him after seeing a picture of him with his prison tats and messy bathroom. I then created a group chat with two of my mates, whom I explained the situation to, and we bullied that account. They kept removing themselves, and we kept adding them back. Please stop re-adding me to this chat. Leave me alone. I said, no, you pay me $700 and we'll stop being bigger buttholes than you were. Then another account messaged me saying they were the scammer's boss and they would make good on their threat if I didn't leave them alone. So I added that person to the chat too, and we continued until the accounts went dead, which took like an hour, maybe two. They both threatened to share the nudes on Austrian chat sites, and I was like, yeah, okay, dummies. We don't know anyone in Austria, so enjoy no money and looking dumb. They had to block me and my mates because I kept re-adding them, and eventually blocked my older brother too because he told them he was going to add them back to the chat. I was a broke bartender and out having drinks with a lot of anger. I got time to get even Steven, even if my older brother was the bloody idiot who created this mess. And my mom never found out. I should remind my older brother that he owes me a beer for being a top-notch moron of a sibling. Our next Reddit post is from that superhero guy. Back about 10 years ago, I drove 3 hours to buy a very specific car and got an hour home when the car died. Luckily, at a garage. I had a mechanic look at it, and he said that it was obvious the seller had botched a problem with piston rings, and it would cost more than I paid to fix it. I rang the seller to discuss it with him, but he ignored my calls, refuses to reply to texts, and I was very polite. I just really wanted to talk to him about it. I didn't send him any abuse. After a couple of days, I got fed up, and I remembered that this guy had a very old phone. One that only accepts text messages of a certain amount of characters and then had to split the text into another message. I, on the other hand, had an iPhone. So I copied and pasted the entire works of Shakespeare into a message and sent it. Apparently, it took a week before he could use his phone again without a text message interrupting him. They came every second or so anytime he turned his phone on. I eventually got a refund and he got his car back. Our next Reddit post is from Opossumsaurus. When I was a sophomore in college, my appendix ruptured, and I spent a couple of weeks in the hospital off and on dealing with various infections and surgery. During my first hospital stay, I shared a room with an older Russian woman who had just had a gastric bypass. I never said a word to her, and just kinda kept to myself watching TV and chatting with my mom when she came to visit. I felt kind of bad that I had to walk my IV pole past her to use the bathroom because I didn't want to disturb her, so I tried to be as quiet as possible and limit the number of trips I made. This lady had the habit of talking really loudly on the phone to her daughter, and since she'd heard me speaking English with my mom, I guess she assumed that I couldn't understand her. I had started learning Russian as a freshman, so I didn't understand everything she was saying, but I could gather bits and pieces. One night, she's on the phone with her daughter, and she says something to the tune of, "I don't have the room to myself anymore. I'm sharing it with this girl, and she's really ugly." Obviously, I didn't look great because I had a ruptured appendix and was just trying to stay alive at that point. And I didn't really care what she thought of me. It just irked me that she thought that it was okay to talk trash about me to her daughter in front of me just because she thought that I couldn't understand her. Plus, I was bored and wanted the satisfaction of making her eat her own words. So the next time I was wheeling my IV pole past her to use the bathroom, I put on my sweetest smile and said, "Izvinicha," which means "excuse me" in my best Russian accent. She didn't say anything to me, but she never called her daughter again while I was there because she knew that I could understand her every nasty word. Down in the comments, NP Highview says, "Similar experience here. I had learned German while working in the States for a German company. My wife and I were on vacation in Florida and were on a tour boat in the Keys when I overheard a German couple complaining loudly about everything. Quality of the food, politeness, or lack of it, in the hotel staff, the weather, the crowds. They moved towards the railing around the ship and pulled out their phones. I asked, "Macht bitte Weilig auf dem Foto sein?" which translates to, "Would you both like to be in the photo?" No more loud complaints for the rest of the boat trip. Then this story from Secret Weapon. A former physics professor told me the story where she was the oblivious one. She and a friend were at a conference speaking their native Polish. It was in the States, and they thought that no one could understand. They were going around the room talking about the people. At one point, the gentleman next to them said, in perfect Polish, "I can see you're getting around to me. Perhaps you should skip over." Our next Reddit post is from LJ. Okay, so my ex is controlling, manipulative, and just flat out mean to me. I've been trying to get away from his grip since November 2023, and here we are now. I would block his number, but he would call restricted over and over. There was no winning. I finally blocked him for the last time and ignored every one of his blocked calls. He would reach out to my friends and show up at my job. I've made police reports, but since he's not threatening me, they can't do much. So yesterday, I finally answered the restricted call. I ever so nicely asked him to please just leave me alone. He said that he would never leave me alone. I hung up. Enough was enough. I signed up for every insurance quote I could think of with his phone number, posting free ads on Craigslist with his number and anything I could think of. He called me again this morning and thanked me because his phone hasn't stopped ringing. I denied having any involvement and asked why he would think it was me, and his response was, "Well, because I keep calling and won't leave you alone." Well, at least he's self-aware. He wanted my energy, he's got it. Be careful what you ask for. Down in the comments, we have this story from Benji. I was pricing health insurance, and I thought that I was registering for my state's exchange, but wound up putting my info into a site to receive information about health plans. I tell you what, I have never experienced such aggressive phone calls as health insurance brokers. Within 5 minutes of entering my information, my phone was ringing nonstop. It took me weeks to figure out how to get off that list, but the calls still slip through every once in a while. But at the height of the madness, I was having to clear my phone about every 3 hours because of how many calls I was getting and the number of voicemails they were leaving. Complete madness. Then beneath that, favorite niece says, I got 31 calls within 25 days from a car dealership. Our next Reddit post is from 3 Crows and Murder. For context, I lived in a condo where we all have assigned parking spots, and there are several visitor spots sprinkled throughout. Well, one day, I came home in the middle of a weekday, so the vast majority of parking spaces were empty. So I was very confused as to why a large, unfamiliar SUV was in my parking spots. Now, we get the occasional visitor that mistakenly or purposefully parks in whatever spot they want. With this in mind, I parked right behind him and approached the window to ask him how long he was planning to be there. He said 45 minutes. I asked him if he could move to a visitor spot. There were some directly across from mine. He said no in the rudest and shrillest voice I'd ever heard come out of a man. Then he started going off about how he's a realtor and he's showing off this house, the door to which is directly in front of my house. And the property management said to park here in this spot. I highly doubt that, and so on and so on. I decided that I didn't have any time or energy for Karens that day, and in the middle of his ranting, I just said, okay then, and walked away to go park in a visitor spot. Rude people irritate me, especially if they're defending their awful behavior. So I promptly took my revenge. My window faces the parking lot, so I set up my speaker on the windowsill and started blasting hardcore rap music for about half an hour, in the hopes that the buyer decided our quiet little community wasn't quiet enough for them. I figured the vast majority of my neighbors were at work anyways, so 30 minutes of loud music wasn't going to annoy anyone too much. I hope I wasted a bunch of his time. Maybe don't be rude to complete strangers. Our next Reddit post is from Basing Funny. I work at an urgent care, which takes patients up until closing time, which is 10 p.m. So as I'm locking the door last night, a guy and his 3 kids yank it open as I have my hand on the lock. So I sit back down to register this final group of people, and he finds a friend of his in the lobby. Of course, the first thing he does is walk over to have a conversation, not even starting the registration process. So I take a look at the clock. 10:01, and he's not moving. So I shut off my computer and shut the lights off, which gets his attention. He walks over and, in the most snarky voice possible, says, "Me and my 3 kids need to be seen." I respond, "Unfortunately, we only take patients until 10 p.m., and that time frame is passed." He responds, saying that he was in the building before 10 p.m. Yeah, but unfortunately, not as a patient, but as a companion to the people that he was talking to in the lobby. So I offer to walk them out so I can lock the door behind them. I was out at 10:05 p.m. and happy as a clam. Feel bad for the kids. The kids didn't get any medical attention, and presumably one of them was sitting there in pain, suffering, while his dad chatted with an old buddy. Hopefully, at least, the kids learn not to be like their dear old dad. That was r/Pettyrevenge, and if you like this content, check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes. Also, hit that subscribe button because I put out new Reddit videos every single day.